When you say it like that, when you talk about your morning routine in this way, there's immediately a question I have in this regard. And this is, something that I see all the time with all of these influencer posts or people who are like all about that productivity lifestyle. I feel like it's always brushed aside that humans have emotions and that
Mhm.
productivity is not something that's like every single day you can achieve this level of efficiency because we're fluctuating, or at least that's what I observe in myself. This idea of, today I was not nearly as productive as I was yesterday because of whatever circumstances, right? The things also of the internal world interfering with our rituals. So I'm wondering, like, from your perspective, like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think people us have been using machines nowadays too much that they're starting to treat themselves as a machine. But it's important to realize like we're also animals. Like animals in nature, they expend energy in short bursts and then they take rest when they need to. Rest is equally important. I think in this hyper productivity driven society right now, it's uh it's just like, oh, you're so focused on the output and the results that you forget that energy efficiency is the most important part, right? So yeah, like coming like I think in my opinion, like if you view yourself as like a professional athlete, right? Like a professional athletes actually focus on getting enough sleep, eating quality nutrition, and the rest more than like and showing up for their training every day with like as much energy as possible. I think like that's I see at least in Silicon Valley, and I was telling you about the 996 regimen, which is basically like from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. you work, and then 6 days a week. And it sounds like very formulaic, first of all, but also I'm very doubtful that your use of energy is fully like I don't think anyone's focusing 100% with full attention and energy on whatever they're trying to do from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Like if you're getting like 3 hours of deep work in a day, that's like really, really good because of all the distractions that may surface throughout the day. So yeah, I think like look, every day we have different levels, varying levels of energy. I think it's just important to embrace where you're at, but more than like focusing on the output, focus on showing up and focus on like conserving your energy. It's like in physics, you have potential energy and then you have kinetic energy. But people are too focused on the kinetic energy part, the movement, the action. But you need to store potential first in order to give energy for the kinetic energy. Like if there's not enough potential energy, then there's not going to be enough kinetic energy. If that makes sense.
It does. Okay, so focus on the potential energy and like trying to minimize I guess, the spendings of energy on things that are not necessarily worthy. I mean, if we take media also in the form of consumption, consuming rather consciously and sparingly, especially in these times where everything is just content and consumable, which is ironic to say on a podcast, but it's exactly that, finding types of media that rather either inspire us or give us some energy rather than just rob us. Like, I feel that often with social media algorithms, as much as there's also good content on social media that can feed you. But I think once you go into this scrolling habit or this hole, I think it's like you're really digging yourself one, because it takes away from the energy that we're kind of preserving for ourselves to focus on other tasks.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think this is where a really quality routine helps a lot because I think, a lot of people have this like uh impression that, oh, I have to show up every day with the maximum amount of motivation to take on the day. And at least from my perspective, I'm trying to build a system of showing up every day that I don't have to consciously think about, oh, do I have the motivation, or like overthink what I have to do. It's kind of just flow into the day. And I think like that's kind of tied to like how your dopaminergic like cycle, without getting too scientific. Um, it's basically just like, are you getting like natural motivation from doing hard things, or like just doing tasks throughout the day? Like for example, waking up, maybe going for a walk, going getting some exercise. Those are good quality sources of dopamine. But if you're just like waking up and then like doom scrolling on Instagram, that's the same dopamine for your brain, but it's coming from a cheap source, like it has like fast food or pornography or whatever, right? So having systems where, you know, the habits are like reinforcing your energy conservation, and like, you know, like it's like you're getting rewarded for actually doing something as opposed to just like being passive. I think that's really like important. Training yourself to just do, like, we're humans, we're supposed to be a bit physical, like be a bit more physical, move in the world, use your brain for like using the mental tool. You know, these are important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like when I started this journey of, I guess, self-growth or whatever you want to call it, I read the books of James Clear and Cal Newport on deep work and atomic habits. I mean, very
Yeah.
popular. And I think it is certainly there also this element of designing your environment to be designed for us to show up. And I think structure and routines are kind of in the same level of that regard. So how do you do this now? Like as a software engineer in Silicon Valley, like what does your routine look like?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have like the most like optimized routine. It's still a work in progress, but yeah, every day I basically wake up, I try to get some I'm not like a big fan of, at least like for my energy levels, I don't show up with the most amount of energy straight up first thing in the morning. So I don't go to the gym first thing in the morning, but I do like to do maybe some yoga or some like, you know, some movement exercise in the morning combined with like a meditation to just ground me, because I wake up with a very hyperactive mind. And I think I've noticed a few people have that as well. So instead of like stimulating the mind, I do the opposite of like settle down into my body and like calm down the nervous system. And then yeah, like I basically go to work. I got my typical whatever working hours are, like usually 9 to 5 ish. And then I come back home and then I do my evening gym. And then yeah, then I just wind down, maybe read a book, listen to an audiobook, um, spend time with my wife. Um, yeah, then it's like just winding down, and then I try to sleep every day by 10 o'clock, around 10 o'clock. Yeah.
All
So
right.
like I'm actually getting like pretty good sleep in terms of like the hours. If I sleep 10 to 7 roughly, it's like probably a bit more than necessary, but like I like the slow like winding down, and then the sort of gives me like half an hour, 45 minutes of like waking up as well. I really like that. I don't want to like rush into my day.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's also funny in this regard because it's such a duality, like even in your answer of this, like talking about not being too overly optimized and not about the machine and everything, but then you started this by saying it's not yet optimized, you know. And I find that funny because it's such a also
Good
the
point.
nature of mankind in a way, this idea of like the balance of finding
Mm,
the pleasure in the process and also wanting to be better, wanting to improve, wanting every day to be better than the last one, mixed with this idea of, okay, compassion for oneself,
yeah,
which I think you've described quite well. And it's
yeah,
interesting to go there.
yeah. I mean, compassion. You know, like that's a good point, because when I was kind of younger, um, I think like we've got like, at least for me, there was this like brute force approach to life. Like, oh, I gotta wake up like with like a military discipline, and like with military discipline have like an intense workout, and then like that's the way to do everything to achieve stuff in the world. But now it's like I have this like sort of internal dialogue where it's like I think there's more gratitude practices happening. Like when I do my yoga meditation in the morning, it's like being grateful, just even for a brief moment, just being grateful for whatever I have in the world. Um, and like being grateful for myself for showing up and for taking care of my body and thanking my body. It's almost like talking to my body a little bit, like thanking my body for showing up and going to the gym, serving me, blah blah blah. Just having that dialogue has just changed. Um, just I just feel good. It's like it's not a brute force approach to life. It doesn't have to be. And now it's just my day is almost a meditation as well. It's like that's what I mean by the flow state. It's like when you have a system, a routine that's like working for you. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. Like I don't go to the gym every day. Some days I'm like, okay, I think I worked out a lot yesterday. I need to recover, and then I just rest. Maybe I just go for like a walk instead. I do some stretching. I listen to my body, um, but at the same time, I don't want to be lazy. That's like the opposite of that is like there's a difference in resting, but there's a difference between being like resting, active resting, and like laziness. I think laziness is it's not helpful at all.
Where would you differ? What would you discern between active resting and laziness? For example, when you say you wind down in the evening, where is the difference between that and laziness?
Well, let's say okay, let's say like you're binge watching like a Netflix episodes or something, right? To me, that's like you're lazy. You're stimulating the mind like a lot. You're lying down, like basically fully disconnected from the body, not really in the present moment. Whereas lazy, like at rest, to me is just like okay, just like you don't have to meditate necessarily, but like just like actively resting, maybe like going for a simple walk, slowing down, breathing slower. It's like being a bit more present, right? So yeah, I think that's how I would kind of distinguish those two.
Okay. Yeah, I see a lot of value in that. I find it interesting because, again, like what I observe in my own life is this fluctuation of energy, right? And I think there is a certain element that one keeps. Yet also there are these days where it just seemingly seems like, okay, I can shop for myself, I can do the best things that I can. At the same time, just this overwhelming thing of like, okay, today I'm not going to do anything. Like a laziness, but also sometimes a mixture of that with listening to the body in a sense of, okay, if I were to show up, especially let's say if it's a creative task, um, I find that more difficult to be very disciplined about it. And a lot of creatives have a different approach to this, of course, but I think there is something to also the muse. Let's call it like that, with the spark of inspiration sometimes. And do you feel that in your job, in the routine that you have, that you sometimes are kissed by a muse, even let's say it's 10 at night, or you don't feel any energy throughout the day? Like, how do you regulate, I guess, the fluctuations of inspiration?
Yeah, I mean, that's like especially as a software engineer, my mind is basically my used like every time I'm coding. So I've noticed like after, let's say, depending on how intense the current task is, the level of um I guess the amount of like energy I'm using for my mind varies. But like let's say I have a new feature I have to push out in the next few days. Yeah, that'll require a lot of mental energy. And I notice usually if I'm not taking like those like single days of like basically doing nothing, but for me that looks like basically not using my mind, like doing more bodily stuff, maybe going for like literally going out in nature. I need at least one day a week, like usually it's like a Sunday, um where I'm just like out and moving and not doing anything else. Because yeah, because I think that's when, and I noticed this in myself, is like if I don't do that, then I enter into like a very like I'm like a brain on a stick kind of state. You know what I mean? I feel very disconnected with my body. I feel less present, and probably these are things like I observe because I guess like over the last few years of practicing presence, basically meditation and stuff, I can notice the difference. But I think if yeah, I think it's important. Some people have like some kind of mindfulness practice, whatever that is, basically of like something that brings them to the present, even if it's painting. I want to get into like a little bit of art. I think that's the side of the brain I want to um use a bit more, the creative side. But yeah, I think anything that brings you to the present is a super helpful exercise for again coming back to the potential energy as well.
What role, this might be a bit of an abstract question, but it's just something that crossed my mind. What role does metaphysicality play in Silicon Valley? So in a way of like, like having thoughts that are kind of going beyond. I like you moving up on the desk.
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point. I've got a standing desk which I oscillate between standing and sitting. Um, Again, for in my office, actually, I got a treadmill under my standing desk, so it like it keeps me at a like it's very slow, but like maybe 0.5 speed or whatever. But I'm like slowly walking and like typing. I've noticed that helps me feel fresh and like I can actually feel more efficient. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I mean, talk
Yeah.
about efficiency. I mean, this is
Yeah.
this is nice.
Yeah.
I could do a lot of rat race jokes there, I mean, but I mean, it's nice. It's nice that it helps you, man.
Yeah.
Um, but what I wanted to say is like, I find it interesting. I guess in the past few years of my life, I've been following various thoughts of, I guess, metaphysicality, of trying to see beyond the veil of reality, in a spiritual sense, and looking at how my life goes from, I guess, a lens that isn't necessarily the present or isn't reflective, but as if I would view myself in a bigger piece of a video game and observing myself out of third person, meaning also following hints and signs. Now, I know that Silicon Valley is one of the hotspots for psychedelics back in the days. So I wonder if some of those thought patterns of following, let's say, synchronicities and signs and let's guidance from the universe, guidance from God, whatever you want to call it, would you say from the insider perspective that you have, is that a thing in Silicon Valley, or is that really more of like an individual stance?
I think it's more of an individual stance, especially this might have been more prevalent in like the early 2000s, I would say, of Silicon Valley. That was to me like the golden age of like Silicon Valley, with Steve Jobs and Elon Musk having like in his early days. I think at those times, um, it was hard to be very data driven with your decision making, especially in software, because there wasn't really much precedent to look to. It was really just like you had to have a strong, almost insane, borderline psychopathic level of belief in yourself, and that was kind of guided by intuition as well. Whereas now I see actually Silicon Valley is like very young now. Like the demographic has changed to be like more fresh graduates are starting new companies, getting funded, and it's very data driven now, where it's like, oh, we have this like whole history of what we believe successful startups look like, almost like people are trying to create a blueprint if they can. And I think, yeah, that element of metaphysicality or intuition has died down in my opinion, or it's not like glorified as much as I would like, because it's hard to, well, first of all, it's hard to quantify intuition, but the second thing is also Silicon Valley now is in a very quantifying state of mind. It's very engineering focused, and they're trying to engineer their success as well. Even with the venture capital money, for example, like they're looking at, well, they'll study Steve Jobs, they'll study Elon Musk, but then they'll try to distill it down into some kind of formulaic process that we could imbibe in our lives. And I think that might be the mistake, because when I look at these people, it's I mean, you can take inspiration from all these great entrepreneurs, sure, but I think the true essence is like everyone is unique, and like nurturing your, the next Steve Jobs is not going to be Steve Jobs. Like the next Steve Jobs is going to be someone else who's super quirky in his own way, who has a different way of thinking. Um, so yeah, I think to your point, it's kind of died down. I would like to see more. I think the spirituality in general amongst the youth, I don't know, in depending on demographics, I've traveled a bit, so I see in America it's like the youth are either really degenerate, or they've gone through that phase of degeneracy and realized the meaninglessness in it, and they're probably seeking a new purpose, or they might be having like some kind of nihilistic feelings. But these are all, in my opinion, good states of being, because that's like a transition into, okay, can I be more in tune with my intuition and stuff. But yeah, I think it's very nascent now. It probably has gotten worse since the psychedelic age. Um, Not to say that psychedelics are not being used, but I don't think they're being used with intention as much these days, if that makes sense.
Okay, because that would be kind of lead me to the next question in that regard, because it has such a history with psychedelics, where some of the most important founders of the technology companies we all know today have had experiences documented. I mean, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, they all say that they had these experiences. And I wonder, have you been invited to circles like that, where it's just a bunch of founders, a bunch of creatives from the Silicon Valley, and say, okay, we're doing a mushroom ceremony somewhere in the mountains close to Berkeley or something?
Um, Actually, no. Like, I think from the outside, you would think Silicon Valley would have more circles like that, and I would have been interested to see stuff like that. Maybe it is happening, but I don't think it's as popular as people think. I personally haven't heard of any circles like that. There is like Burning Man that happens once in a year, which is relatively close, well, to SF. Like, I mean, it's like in close to Vegas more than SF, really, but it's close enough that like most of, I guess, like I see a lot of tech people going to Burning Man and having this like psychedelic experience. But it seems like when you're back in SF, like things are pretty normal, and like, yeah, you just go back to work kind of thing and try to build $1 billion company. um yeah, I don't think there's much of that, like, uh community driven sort of psychedelic exploration going on.
Okay, so I mean, from the outside looking in, this looks to me like everyone is just out there hustling, trying to avoid humanity, trying to create the next billion-dollar companies, you say, without any regards for communal connection, unless they forward them in business, right? I mean, it's a little bit what I see here in Lisbon as well, where and I catch myself sometimes at networking events or all types of events, where it's like, okay, can this person forward a cause that I'm currently behind? And I think this, I hear that with people talking to me. I can observe that sensation in myself, and it's interesting to find a balance in between to kind of create a community of people that have ambition that are also benefiting to your cause. I think there's nothing wrong with that, but also to embrace community more than I think what you're describing to me now, because that really seems like everyone is on their own mission to $1 billion, and whoever's on the sides, yeah, it's a nice stepping stone maybe. But yeah, how do you feel about that? Like the communal aspect between people in the valley.
Yeah, I mean, ain't nobody got time for that shit. Like, that's the vibe I get right now. Is like, it's literally like, I think part of it is attributed to this AI bubble we're in. It really is accelerating everything. Like, building new companies is well, at least from a technical perspective, the you can code much faster. You can build products faster. So yeah, it's somewhat of a rat race, but it's also like, hey, if I don't speed up, someone else will speed up and take that opportunity potentially. So that's the kind of vibe. And yeah, like unfortunately, the human side of things, the community, the like, no one gives a shit right now. At least what I'm seeing is like, look, this is the golden era for building a company, apparently, like at least an AI startup. And yeah, no one really gives a shit. Like they'll kind of like, if there's like a partnership to be formed and then we can be friends as like a byproduct of that, then great. But like not much more time apart from that is like the vibe I'm getting here, which is kind of unfortunate. Like you should have seen San Francisco like during the Christmas holidays. Like it was a fucking ghost town. I mean, like there was no one here. Like there was no one here. I left SF for like a few days, but I try to stay back to see if like, hey, like maybe people we can hang out with someone, like maybe there'll be some events or some community events or whatever. Um, Empty, like everyone just fucked off somewhere else, and then they came back. Like they're just coming back this week mostly. But yeah, even last week it was kind of still recovering from emptiness. Um, yeah, it's that's the vibe, man. Like it's funny. Like California is very beautiful, and San Francisco is very beautiful. Like there's a lot of beautiful things to see, but no one has time almost to think of to experience it. It's kind of sad. Um, yeah, I guess that's what it is. It's like yeah, it's kind of the culture. Like this is why this 996 thing has been popping up lately as well. Um, Again, they're looking at like Elon Musk sleeping on the factory floor of Tesla during the early days of his other companies, and they're like, oh wow, that's like amazing, um uh, like amazing like dedication to the cause, insane perseverance. I'm like, yeah, that's true, but you should also realize like there are aspects, like you have to ask yourself, what do you want in life? It's not just about like, hey, like this person got this much dollars and this is what they did, therefore this is what I should do. It's like there are many ways to achieve dollars, but who are you becoming on in that process is equally important. I think people don't question that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the process is far more important than the outcome in itself. We just talk from, I guess, a human perspective, right? I think this picture that is drawn sometimes of the evil capitalist of America, the pushover, You know, I think in all stories we also see the outcome of that. Of okay, here you may have a lot of money. Who do you have celebrating beside you that is a real friend or that is a genuine good relationship? And I think that's also so incredibly valuable. And it's one of those stories that, I mean, of course, a lot of people say it's like, oh, money can't buy you happiness, and those types of, like, I guess, cliche things. And I think just even not from a perspective of having a lot of money, it's just, it's obvious that that's not the case, because it's at the end of the day, you can hug money and can give you the feeling like hugging a friend or anything like that. And I think that is so contributed to happiness. And I think having financial stability is great, and being able to like even give it to others, be philanthropic about it, is great. But I think this mixture, this balance of having that whilst also caring for those on just a human level, seems very important. And you really feel like in San Francisco, that's something that's kind of, everyone is so in their tunnel vision to build right now, that that's more or less brushed to the side.
Um, look, I'm not saying like every single person, but it seems, yeah, like the vast majority are kind of tunnel vision pilled, or like they're like, hey, even for example, with these early stage, like I've seen a lot of like pre-seed stage companies, they need to hire like their first engineers or their first team members, and they're like, oh, you have to move to a CEF. Like the requirements, like you have to move to a CEF. This is a fast-paced company. You gotta like we have this like 996 culture. Some of them say that. Um, you gotta be like, like uh these, like, yeah, you should just be like dedicated to the cause basically, as much as like insane. You should be as insane as they are as a founder. um that's kind of like the vibe. um I've not heard of anyone talk about um the human side of whatever you're saying, like, like even like mission used to be a big thing, uh even I would say pre AI era, right? Like companies would put in their like this is the mission, this is what we're trying to achieve. At least that would give like a sense of purpose. But like I don't even see much mission driven like statements anymore. It's kind of sad.
That's crazy. It reminds me, I was at the Web Summit this past year, and there was also the pitch of the year, where of course companies presented in order to get investment for their ideas. And there was one jury member there, and he just asked one of the founders, okay, so how many hours in a week do you work? And the
Mm,
guy goes like, oh, maybe 60. And the dude's response was just super cold, like, I don't think that's enough. And it
mm.
was just like, okay, what are we doing? Like, I understand the ambition and the hustle, but it's crazy how it's also, as you say, an industry standard, or it's pushed that people completely give themselves up in order for companies that nowadays sometimes even lack a mission statement. And it's really
Yeah,
just about the money.
it's, I mean, it could be many things, right? Like it doesn't have to always stem from money, but I've noticed like there is a chip on the shoulder of a lot of these people, like in some way. Maybe their like relationships have suffered to some degree. They have some kind of chip on the shoulder from that, or maybe they did come from a poor background and the only thing they think about is money. For whatever reason, the reasons can be different. But yeah, I think the outcome is kind of the same. It's there's like this sort of underlying dryness when you're approaching it from that mechanical perspective, right? Um, like the number of hours. Look, don't get me wrong. It's if you're trying to do something great, you have to work hard, like 100%. Like you have to work very hard. But my only point is that that looks different for different people. Like sort of prescribing everyone the same hours or same work style doesn't make sense. You have to work hard in a way that makes sense to you, but you have to like, but like again, I understand to some degree. I understand them because it's like it's hard to quantify that. It just comes from like just knowing yourself and being honest with yourself and sharing that honesty with whoever you're working with. It's like, hey, look, this is how I work. I'm working very hard. But yeah, like I don't function like this. Like my brain doesn't function like this. And it makes sense because I think everyone doesn't have the same life experiences, maybe doesn't have the same levels of energy throughout the day, for example. So you really got to figure out what works for yourself. But yeah, you definitely have to work hard. Like I talked about rest at the earlier in this podcast, but like you need to be working hard to the point where you need rest, right? It's like I think that part is also under focused on, right? It's like you should genuinely be exhausted and require rest. Like at least if you're a professional athlete, right? If I think of, hey, I'm trying to do great things, I'm trying to build a great company, yeah, I need to work hard and be tired. Um, but there's joy. Like find joy. If you're not finding joy in that process and what you're working hard for and what you're resting for and like what you're doing this every day for, then yeah, it's not gonna survive very long. That's the most important thing. Like, is like, why the fuck am I even building this company? Is it just to pretend like, hey, I raised like a bunch of money and I want to show off to other people that I'm great or better than them? It's like that's not a good reason. Like you should just do this for it has to be like way more meaningful than that to you.
How would you say a person can find their meaning? Because I think it's tricky, like even what you said before, young kids graduate and there's a sense of nihilism or meaninglessness that it can be felt. How would you say that process went for you, or how would you in general perhaps say that there is a way to find meaning in the life you live or in the activities that you do?
It's a great question. Well, in the past, it's a good segue from what I just said. Basically, I would put too much pressure almost on like, hey, the company I'm working with or the thing I'm doing should like actually make a significant positive impact on society. But then when you're focused on that, you really kind of like too much on the mass impact. You don't even focus on like the small impact, which is like, hey, one or two people should just be it should just improve their lives in some way. So basically for me, right now where I'm at, I'm just more in tune with like who I am, like how I'm showing up every day, and the work I'm doing is with people that I enjoy being with, and it's like so it's basically a combination of like enjoying the company of the people I'm working with, having that gives me a sense of purpose that hey, we're a team trying to do some great some great things in technology. The technology itself is pretty interesting, stimulating. It drives my creative juices, so that's satisfying me. And and then for me, all of that combined with having a partner, like all of these are like satisfying my life. So I think the way I show up every day is way more complete from within, if that makes sense, than I was in the past. Like because now I'm like, hey, look, I'm actually like really to some degree like I enjoy the process now a lot more than I used to before. Before it's very outcome driven. Now it's like, hey, every day the process is shaping me into a new, evolved, better human being, and I find great joy in that. So that's just like personally where I'm at.
It's beautifully said, and I think having kind of a spider web of purpose, not just saying like, okay, there's one particular point that's driving me, but it's actually kind of coming from different sources, I think is also a good fallback system. I often think purpose is sometimes too amplified in the society as well, where people are like, oh, I don't have the same type of passion like Indiana Jones about finding ancient mysteries, But
Yeah.
I don't think it's about that. I think it's about, yeah, following your curiosities, your interests, but also creating a system, like you say, surrounding an environment within and without, that allows us to continuously be constantly evolving. I think that was very well put. And do you still feel like sometimes that you lack a sense of meaning or purpose? Or how have you dealt with that in the past?
Yeah, I mean, look, some days it feels a bit monotonous, right? Like that's normal, but it's important to let that sit, be with that feeling, and let it pass, and then assess. Because it could just be like 1 or 2 days, but then the overall bigger picture is like still fine, right? So, yeah, I think for now, for me, at least so far, everything is like the oil is like like the machine is lubricated. Um, I know we're not machines, like I said from the beginning, but if I'm gonna go with that analogy, like yeah, my routine is great. I'm feeling good, and I feel like I'm evolving. This is basically something like I'm getting into a flow state much easier now than I ever have before, and more frequently. So to me, that's just feeling very fulfilling. And it's kind of counterintuitive, but like the capacity to work hard for longer has increased without any effort. It's like an oxymoron, right? It's like before I would have to like almost brute force myself to work hard for longer hours, but now it's like because my energy conservation is so good, I'm not wasting my energy in places that don't require it. I can just show up and do what I have to do throughout the day for longer hours and not feel like I'm like destroying myself basically.
I mean, that's beautiful. It's also beautiful to recognize and acknowledge the own process that we've been through. I think is also very important, that can get lost in this productivity culture of just always striving for more instead of just respecting and acknowledging how far we've come. Because it's easy to forget. I have a friend of mine, he always has a picture of when he was a child up on his desk for two reasons. One being the creativity that it gives him, because he allows himself to be reminded how important play is. And the other also to see how far he came from then in various aspects. And I think that is a beautiful way to kind of go about the process of sometimes making it a habit to look back a few years, not necessarily the child age, but look at yourself at 20, at 18, at 24, whatever it might be, to just see, if you look in the eyes of that past version of yourself, how far you've come from that point. I think is
Hmm.
very healthy to do.
I like what you mentioned there. I think I was just gonna say, like, you mentioned play. That's like the feeling I'm getting with like building a new like the company that I'm working on right now. And whatever I'm doing right now. I do I think that's what I'm feeling is like this is like a play of like, hey, like this whole like money monopoly game thing. Now I can like it's like points. I just see it as points in a game, and I get to play this game. But I'm playing it right now with more detachment to the outcome than I ever have before. So it feels that feeling of playfulness is there because I'm not attached to any outcome. It's just like, oh wow, okay, I didn't maybe I didn't do this thing very well. Oh, okay, I can learn and improve and get better at that. But there's no like bashing of myself, or there's no like oh like yeah, like negative energy around it, if that makes sense. It just feels like, oh, like a child when they make a mistake, they're not bashing themselves up. They're just like, oh, it's so silly. Like, okay, I'll learn next time and do it, you know.
Yeah, Yeah, I observed my nieces the other day too, and how they interact with things they make. So it's just like, they spend 20 minutes drawing something and they're immersed in the process of just drawing, 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 drawing. Then they give it to someone and they're done with it. They don't care how the people even perceives it. Like they're just like, oh, here, I drew this for you, and then they run off and do the next thing. And I think
Mm,
that's so pure, because it is never about the outcome. It never is. It's about the process of drawing, but also the process of sharing that with someone. I find both
yeah.
interesting. Not about attachment of what they may say to what you've shared, but I think also, which was also the spark for this podcast, even, right? To say, okay, let me play, but also let me share, because I think it's an
Mm.
important part of the process as well.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. That's exactly it. Yeah.